My wife used my credit card to buy perfume, then used it to seduce my brother in our bed. I didn't fight back. I exiled them from everything they touched. The suburbs of Portland have a way of hiding secrets behind manicured lawns and freshly painted mailboxes. For 6 years I've called this particular corner of Oregon home, a colonial-style house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac that I rebuilt with my own hands, using inheritance money from my father. Every nail, every board, every coat of paint carries my fingerprints. At 35, I'd come to see this house as my greatest personal achievement. I'm Noah Dempsey, project manager for Westbrook Construction. We're on the verge of securing a suburban development contract that could revolutionize our company's finances. It's the kind of deal that turns small firms into industry players, the kind that changes lives. My wife Vivian doesn't understand construction, but she understands power. 32 years old with sharp features that turn heads at every charity gala she came from. Money and connections. When we first met, her passion was infectious, her eyes lighting up when she talked about our future. These days, she's more concerned with Instagram followers than our dwindling conversations over dinner. Her attention has shifted from building a home to building her personal brand. Then there's my brother Wyatt. 30 years old and perpetually between jobs. I've lost count of how many times I've vouched for him at construction sites, only to have foremen call asking why he hasn't shown up for 3 days straight. I've paid off the bar tabs, made the apologies, and once even smoothed over a minor assault charge. Blood is blood, I always told myself. Family sticks together. It was a Tuesday in June when the Portland heat pressed down like a hot iron. I left the construction site early, forgot my phone at home, and we were expecting an important call from our Canadian investors. Simple mistake, ordinary day. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. No TV chattering in the background, no sound of Vivian's conference calls. The kitchen was untouched, blinds half drawn. I dropped my keys on the counter, listening to the silence. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Soft. Feminine laughter. Vivian's laugh. But we didn't have guests scheduled. My calendar was empty. I stood frozen at the foot of the stairs. My heart didn't race. It sank heavy as concrete setting in a foundation. Each wooden step creaked as I climbed a countdown to something I already knew, but couldn't yet name. Maybe she was on a video call? I thought maybe she was recording one of her lifestyle segments for her growing audience of online followers. I reached our bedroom door, hesitated for just a moment, then pushed it open. The world I had built collapsed in an instant. Vivian lay in my brother's arms, her blouse unbuttoned, lipstick smeared. They were laughing on the gray bedsheets I'd changed just last week. The air was thick with her perfume. South African lilies, the scent I'd given her for our 6th anniversary. Wyatt jerked upright, face flushing red, instinctively moving to cover Vivian's exposed chest. But Vivian didn't startle, didn't cover herself. Instead, she sat up slowly, fixing her hair with deliberate movements, before meeting my eyes with a smile that held no warmth. "Well, there you have it," she said, her voice as metallic and cold as a nail gun. "Going to cry about it, save the tears for court." I didn't yell, didn't throw punches or curse. I simply stared at them both, a gaze that seemed to strip the skin from their bodies. Wyatt lowered his head, but Vivian only faltered for a second before regaining her composure. "You're painfully boring, you know that," she said, crossing her legs on our bed. "What, not going to kick him out? Not going to hit me?" I turned around and walked downstairs, my hands trembling but my face stone still. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, 3 missed calls from our Canadian partners. I walked out into the sunlight, but in my mind pieces were already falling into place like a blueprint beginning to take form. As I stepped off the porch, Vivian's voice followed me. "Running away is what you do best." I didn't answer, but as I climbed into my truck, one question lingered. Did she know about the hidden camera I'd installed in our bedroom after the last break-in attempt? I drove aimlessly for 30 minutes before finding myself in the parking lot of Charlie's Grill, a faded diner on the east side, where Mom used to take me after Little League games. The neon sign flickered with the same unsteady rhythm I remembered from childhood, a comforting defect in a world suddenly turned foreign. Inside, I slid into a corner booth, ordered a burger I wouldn't touch, and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen before dialing Eleanor Grant, my late mother's attorney, and the woman who'd helped me navigate a property line dispute last year. Eleanor had always struck me as someone who'd seen all of humanity's ugliness and remained unmoved by it. Noah. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp as autumn air. What's happened? I told her everything while staring at the condensation forming on my water glass. No emotion, just facts. When I finished, there was no gasp, no sympathetic murmurs, just pragmatic silence followed by, "They think they're clever. Our job is to prove they're both stupid and arrogant." I checked into a roadside motel that night, $59.99 plus tax, with air conditioning that rattled like a dying engine. Sleep wasn't coming, so I opened my laptop and began methodically changing passwords, bank accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios, all the separate accounts Vivian had never bothered to learn about. I pulled up our prenuptial agreement signed 6 years earlier, when Vivian still pretended to find my caution endearing. There it was in black and white, complete protection of premarital assets. The original was safely locked in a safety deposit box that only I could access. Vivian had dismissed it as pessimistic paperwork at the time, using the hotel's complimentary notepad. I wrote my first entry. Day 1 discovery, no anger, no resistance, remember. The next morning I returned home. Vivian opened the door, wearing one of my old Oxford shirts, her hair wet from a shower. Wyatt sat on my sofa eating cereal from my bowls, feet propped on my coffee table. "Oh, you're back already?" Vivian asked. Not bothering to button the top of the shirt properly, I didn't answer. I walked straight to the living room, grabbed a blanket from the hall closet and placed it on the couch. I would sleep there. Silent. "What's this?" Vivian called after me. "Not going to demand your house back, not going to fight for your wife." Such a coward. Wyatt snickered, muttering something under his breath. I kept my phone recording in my pocket. After they left for whatever afternoon activities betrayers engage in, I reset the security camera system password. Vivian had helped install it, but had since lost interest in home security. I added small cameras in the living room, kitchen, and garage, all perfectly legal, since the house was solely in my name, a fact that would soon become very relevant. I began documenting everything: Vivian wearing my clothes like trophies, Wyatt driving my car with his feet propped on the dashboard. Their arguments grew more frequent as Wyatt became comfortable in his new position. Each heated exchange captured and time-stamped in my records. I noted when Wyatt accidentally dropped bank statements on the kitchen counter, evidently planning something with my finances. I recorded Vivian's phone call to her friend where she boasted, "My husband's like a ghost now. No reaction. I'm seeing how long he'll take it." 3 days into my silent vigil, I called Layla Monroe. We'd gone to high school together before life pulled us in different directions. She'd become a respected interior designer, while I'd built structures instead of decorating them. "Noah Dempsey." She answered with genuine warmth. "It's been ages. I'm renovating." I lied. "Completely fresh start. Could we meet for coffee to discuss ideas?" We met at a cafe downtown. Layla hadn't changed much still. Direct, still observant, still with that crooked smile that made strangers want to confess their secrets. "You look like hell," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "It's been a rough week." She didn't pry, just nodded and pulled out a portfolio of previous projects. When I described what I wanted, complete transformation, nothing recognizable from before, she studied my face. "When people need someone they call, I like that about you," she said simply. In my mind, I could already see the new house cleansed of the 2 snakes wearing human skin. That night, returning to the silent house, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you're safe? I know what you're doing." I checked the security system immediately. One of the cameras in the corner of the living room had been rotated, now pointing directly at me. I readjusted the camera that night, making it look like the wind from an open window had shifted it. Then I added a new layer to my plan. I would play the part of a defeated man trying desperately to maintain appearances. Every morning I woke before sunrise. I'd shower, shave meticulously, and dress in neatly pressed shirts and slacks. I'd brew coffee, leave some for them, and head to work without a word. My colleagues noticed nothing different. The construction site became my sanctuary of normalcy. Back at home, my silence drove Vivian to escalation. She started testing my breaking point with increasingly provocative behaviors. She'd accidentally walk through the living room, wearing only my dress shirt while I was reading financial reports. She'd moan theatrically when Wyatt was in the next room. One evening, while I was eating a silent dinner at the kitchen counter, she deliberately played sex sounds through her phone speakers, watching me for any reaction. Wyatt, emboldened by my passivity, tracked mud across the Persian rug I'd spent 3 months' salary on. No cleaning, no apology, just a smirk thrown in my direction. Through it all, I maintained my mask of defeat. I'd occasionally sigh heavily for their benefit or stare longingly at family photos. Behind closed doors, I meticulously documented every incident in both digital notes and a leather-bound journal I kept locked in my work truck. I upgraded my surveillance system with a USB camera disguised as a phone charger and a voice recorder the size of a key fob. I placed them strategically in the kitchen and living room, the two locations where Vivian and Wyatt felt safest plotting. The evidence accumulated rapidly. Crystal-clear video showed them discussing finding a lawyer before he loses it. While splitting a bottle of the scotch I'd been saving for my promotion celebration, I captured Vivian on a Zoom call with her friend boasting, "I'm clearing him out of my life and he doesn't even realize it." Most damning was Wyatt casually telling her, "Just a few more weeks and we'll have enough account data," confirming they were planning to access my finances. I moved quickly. In a single day, I changed every password, Wi-Fi banking stocks, investment accounts, documenting each change methodically for future evidence. I revoked Vivian's access to utilities, internet, and streaming services. She didn't notice, still believing I was too broken to function. Eleanor Grant proved invaluable. She helped me quietly withdraw my ownership stake from a small equipment rental company. Wyatt and I had started together years ago, a company I'd put on hold when he started borrowing from the till. "We're moving everything to a separate trust," Eleanor explained as we sat in her wood-paneled office. "Single-name ownership protected from marital dispute. Oregon has excellent protection for premarital assets." At the bank, I transferred personal assets to this new trust, completing paperwork that secured my financial future regardless of marital status. "And the house?" I asked Eleanor during our next meeting. "I've double-checked the records," she replied, spreading property documents across her desk. "Vivian's name appears nowhere. No co-ownership, no equity rights. It's entirely your premarital property as stipulated in the prenup." On Sunday afternoon, while Vivian and Wyatt were out shopping with my credit card, I invited Layla to see the house. We walked through each room as I explained my vision for transformation. "I want everything different. Floors, walls, even the way the air smells when you walk in." Layla studied me, her designer's eye assessing more than just the space. "Why?" "I'm erasing 2 shadows from this house." She didn't ask for clarification. Instead, she touched my arm gently and said, "I'll help, but don't destroy yourself while clearing them out." That night, I noticed something had changed. Vivian's demeanor shifted from smug to watchful. I later discovered she'd been snooping through my browser history and found repeated searches for Layla Monroe's interior design portfolio. From my makeshift office in the garage, I heard them arguing in our bedroom. "You think he's just been quiet?" "No, he's planning something," Vivian hissed. "So what? He doesn't have the guts to file for divorce." Wyatt replied, his confidence misplaced. I transcribed their words verbatim, saving the file as Evidence Day 17txt and backing it up to my secure cloud storage. The following Thursday, Eleanor called. "I've completed the eviction notice under Oregon personal property law, citing illegal occupancy by Wyatt and financial conspiracy by Vivian. It's ready when you are." I held the document in my hands later that day, each word like cold, hard metal. The legal language stripped away any pretense. This was no longer about emotions, but about ownership and rights. I just needed the perfect moment to serve it when they believed their victory was complete. That moment was approaching faster than I anticipated. As I reviewed security footage from our bedroom camera, I watched Vivian rifling through my home office drawers, methodically photographing any financial documents she found. Wyatt stood guard at the door, occasionally glancing nervously down the hallway. "Find anything?" he whispered. "Not the prenup," she muttered. "He must have it somewhere else." I smiled grimly at the screen. The original was indeed somewhere else in a safety deposit box, only I could access. Close to midnight, a soft knock at the door pulled me from my laptop. I checked the peephole empty. The porch light revealed nothing but shadows. When I cracked the door open, I found a plain white envelope on the welcome mat. No name, no markings. Inside was a photocopy of my prenuptial agreement, the same one locked in my bank's vault. The prenup copy shook me. Someone had accessed my safety deposit box, or had connections to someone who could. Either way, the message was clear. I wasn't the only one gathering evidence. I called Eleanor immediately. "It's an intimidation tactic," she said, "and it tells us they're getting desperate." How should I respond? Don't let them wonder if their message even reached you. After sleepless nights, analyzing what the envelope meant, I decided it was time. Friday evening, I arrived home earlier than usual. Vivian was lounging on the sofa, flipping through an interior design magazine. No doubt planning how to redecorate with my money. Wyatt sprawled shirtless nearby, beer in hand, feet propped on my coffee table. They barely acknowledged me as I walked in. Their mistake. I pulled the eviction notice from my briefcase and placed it on the table directly in front of Vivian. "What's this?" she asked with a half smile, not bothering to sit up. 30 days, I said calmly. "You and him out of my house." Wyatt lurched to his feet, chest puffed out like some territorial animal. "Who the hell do you think you're threatening?" I met his eyes without flinching. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm informing you of what my lawyer and the police will enforce." I turned and walked away, leaving them to absorb the bomb I'd just dropped. Their shocked silence lasted only seconds before erupting into shouting that followed me out the door. The next morning, Vivian's response came swift and desperate. She hired Jeffrey Palmer, a former entertainment publicist turned attorney known for his slippery tactics. By afternoon, Eleanor received his letter demanding half the house and substantial assets, claiming Vivian's considerable contributions to building our home life. Eleanor's counterattack was devastating in its simplicity. She sent back the original property records, showing sole ownership receipts for all renovations in my name only, and the coup de grace video footage of Wyatt and Vivian kissing in our living room. The accompanying note read simply, "Adultery with husband's brother is not a contribution to home life, recognized by Oregon courts." While legal missiles flew back and forth, I launched a different kind of offensive. I recorded the first episode of a podcast I called Quiet Exit, telling my story without names, describing how I discovered my wife's betrayal with my brother and chose silence as my weapon. Sometimes the quietest response is the deadliest. I said into the microphone, not because it hurts them, but because it gives you space to save yourself. The podcast exploded, 10,000 downloads in 3 days. People recognized something universal in the story, the quiet dignity in refusing to become what hurt you. Messages flooded my inbox. "I was you 5 years ago. Your story is helping me breathe again. Thank you for giving words to what I couldn't explain." Vivian called, her voice trembling with rage. "Are you slandering me online?" I ended the call without responding. She'd forfeited her right to explanations. The pressure began fracturing their united front. I overheard Wyatt pacing in the guest room, his voice anxious. "You said he'd just keep quiet and take it." "He is quiet," Vivian snapped, "but he's not stupid." Their sleeping arrangements separated. Wyatt started making cash withdrawals from Vivian's card without telling her. When she discovered the missing money, their confrontation happened right in front of me in the kitchen. "You stealing from me now?" she hissed, face inches from his. "I needed it," he mumbled. "You said we'd share everything." "I didn't mean my everything, you parasite." The slap echoed through the kitchen. I stood silently observing phone recording in my pocket. Neither noticed me, too lost in their imploding alliance. That night, I packed essentials into my truck, laptop, documents, a few changes of clothes, and the leather journal filled with evidence. I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment downtown, small but clean, with windows overlooking the street. The monthly rent was less than what I'd been spending on scotch that Wyatt drank. My first night there, I popped open a cold beer, put on Miles Davis, and wrote the opening line of what would become a book. The day I moved out of my house, I didn't lose a wife. I removed a tumor. The official divorce papers went out through Eleanor a week later, citing adultery and providing enough evidence to block any asset claims. The filing included a restraining order against Wyatt, barring him from my property and workplace. Vivian called at midnight when she received the papers, her words slurring slightly. "You think you've won. I will make you regret this for the rest of your miserable life." I replied simply, "I'm not winning. I'm taking out the trash." Her screams filled the speaker. I disconnected. The weeks that followed brought a strange sense of lightness. My apartment became a sanctuary. The podcast audience grew, connecting me to a community of people rebuilding after betrayal. I found myself sleeping through the night again, waking without that immediate crush of dread. I was recording the 5th episode of Quiet Exit when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Layla's familiar face. When I opened the door, she stood there holding a portfolio of sketches, eyes bright with purpose. "I think it's time we started designing your new house," she said. But what froze me wasn't her words. It was the silver sports car parked behind her. Vivian's car. I stared at Vivian's silver sports car parked behind Layla. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Is that—" I started to ask. "No," Layla said quickly. "I borrowed it from a client for the day. My car's in the shop." Her eyes held mine, steady and untroubled. "Can I come in? I've been working on some concepts I think you'll love." I hesitated, then stepped aside. The car bothered me, but Layla had earned my trust. As she spread her designs across my small dining table, I pushed the silver car from my mind. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, the real Vivian appeared at my apartment door. The transformation was jarring. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake." "Noah," she said, clutching her purse with white knuckles. I didn't invite her in, just stood in the doorway watching her performance. She'd come alone, no silver sports car in sight. "Please," she begged, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Just hear me out." When I remained silent, she dropped to her knees in the hallway. A passing neighbor raised his eyebrows but kept walking. "Wyatt means nothing to me," she whispered. "You're the one I need." I looked at her as if examining a stranger. "You're right," I said finally. "I am nothing to you." Her face transformed instantly, tears evaporating as rage took their place. She slammed her palm against my doorframe. "You'll regret this." The door closed between us. Cold hallway air seeped under the doorway. Inside, I brewed coffee and recorded every word of our exchange in my audio journal, another piece of evidence in a case that was already won. Meanwhile, Quiet Exit passed 50,000 downloads. In each episode, I detailed the layers of deception, how betrayal from both a spouse and a sibling creates a unique kind of hollowness that can only be filled by reclaiming your own narrative. Listeners left thousands of comments. "You're telling my story. She's the female version of my manipulative ex." One anonymous comment stood out. "Never trust the sudden remorse. It's just another tactic." A major podcast network reached out inviting me to share my experience as a voice of survival, someone who'd endured profound personal betrayal without surrendering their dignity. Vivian began posting cryptic content online, black and white photos, philosophical quotes, tagging me in posts I never acknowledged. Her desperate attempts to control the narrative found no purchase. My sister Jenna, who'd maintained awkward neutrality until now, texted me. "Wyatt got kicked out by Vivian, crashing at old friend's place, drinking heavily." A former co-worker messaged, "Saw your brother at O'Malley's last night," cursing Vivian for throwing him out. Black Eye looked rough. Vivian called me at 3 a.m., her voice slurred. "I'm lonely. Only you understand me." I said nothing, listening to her begin to sob tears. Not for me, but for what I represented, control she could no longer exercise. The entire social ecosystem they'd relied on collapsed around them. My father, who had always made excuses for Wyatt, called me one afternoon. "He's no son of mine anymore," he said gruffly. "Just wanted you to know that." Vivian was removed from the Charity Foundation board, where she'd been the public face. Her social media following dwindled as she became increasingly erratic in her posts. She called her new lawyer only to have him decline to continue representation after losing 3 consecutive motions to Eleanor. The construction site where I'd once helped Wyatt get work posted his photo at the security gate with instructions to deny entry. Reputation incompatible with worksite standards. The final court date arrived on a clear October morning. Vivian wore an expensive black dress and diamond earrings, her mask of composure firmly in place. Wyatt sat in the gallery behind her, though not at the attorney's table, a visual statement that fooled no one. I wore a simple gray suit, Eleanor beside me like a granite pillar. Unfazed, unshakable. Vivian's lawyer attempted a predictable strategy. My client suffered emotional abandonment and sought comfort elsewhere. Eleanor's counterpunch was methodical. She presented the original prenuptial agreement notarized and pristine. Next came the video evidence of infidelity, time-stamped and undeniable. Finally, she played the audio recordings of Vivian boasting about clearing him out without him knowing. When Wyatt attempted to interrupt with objections from the gallery, Eleanor calmly requested that the judge remove the co-respondent in this infidelity case from the courtroom. The judge's ruling was decisive. Vivian received no claim to the house. There would be no post-divorce financial support. She had no rights to any personal property or assets belonging to me. As the gavel fell, I looked at Vivian one final time. She shot me a look of pure hatred, screaming across the courtroom, "You're not a real man." I responded simply, "I'm not a game." After court, Layla and I had dinner at a small riverside restaurant. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the water as she placed a portfolio on the table between us. The renovations, she said, opening to the first page. Her designs transformed my house into something unrecognizable. An expanded living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. Walls painted cool slate blue. A central fireplace I'd always dreamed of but never built. "Why are you still here?" I asked. Suddenly, Layla met my eyes. "I rebuilt my house once. Now I'm helping you rebuild your life." The following week, I recorded the 15th episode of Quiet Exit, focusing on the moment when you realize the war is over but the rebuilding has only begun. As I finished the recording, my phone buzzed with a message from a listener who'd commented regularly since the first episode. "I'm an attorney. Your story deserves to be a book. Call me when you're ready." I called the attorney listener the next day. Within a week, I had a book deal with a mid-sized publisher specializing in memoirs of personal transformation. The advance wasn't substantial, but that wasn't the point. The story needed to be told. While renovations progressed on my house, I settled back into my small apartment. For the first time in nearly a decade, I was truly alone. No Vivian's constant social media updates filling the background. No Wyatt's problems to solve. Just me. I established a routine Vivian would have mocked as painfully boring. Every morning I hit the gym at 5:30. I cooked simple, healthy meals instead of ordering takeout. I read books about architecture and design, not just construction manuals. I even started meditating, something Vivian had once called a waste of time when you could be networking. The podcast reached 100,000 downloads. Sponsorship offers flooded my inbox, supplement companies, therapy apps, men's lifestyle brands. I turned them all down. The podcast wasn't about monetization, but about maintaining an authentic voice. Once you sold that, what was left instead, I channeled my energy into writing The Book of Exits. It wasn't a revenge story or a tale of victimhood. It was about something more fundamental, how I found my way out of hell without screaming, without hatred, by simply walking away from what was destroying me. Meanwhile, Wyatt's spiral continued. Jenna sent me a text with a mugshot attached. "Thought you should know bar fight." He kept yelling about women like Vivian being the root of all evil. I didn't attend his court date. Jenna sent a photo anyway. Wyatt with an unkempt beard, hollow eyes. No one sitting behind him in support. Vivian's downfall played out more publicly. A video surfaced of her drunken live stream ranting about the uselessness of men. While barely able to form coherent sentences, the luxury brands she'd partnered with dropped her. Her influencer status collapsed overnight. An anonymous email reached my podcast account. "She's couch surfing with friends now." 3 months behind on rent at her apartment. No one trusts her anymore. I didn't respond. Their stories were no longer mine to carry. The renovations finished in early December. When I walked through the front door of my house, the transformation took my breath away. The scent of fresh lumber and paint filled the air. Light poured through the windows Layla had insisted on enlarging, illuminating spaces that once felt oppressive. I'd replaced almost every piece of furniture except my mother's piano. It stood in the corner of the living room, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as testimony that real family doesn't stab you in the back. I hosted a small housewarming construction crew friends, Jenna, Eleanor, and Layla. We ate pizza on the new hardwood floors, drank beer, and talked about future projects. Not once did anyone mention Vivian or Wyatt. They'd become irrelevant to the story I was living. The Book of Exits launched at a downtown bookstore on a cold January evening. Over 200 people filled the space. Podcast listeners, fellow survivors of betrayal. Curious readers, I signed copies for 3 hours, hearing snippets of stories that echoed my own, my wife and my best friend, my husband and his secretary, my girlfriend and my cousin. Different details, same wound, the same need to exit with dignity. Layla stood nearby throughout the event, quietly observing. She didn't interject or seek attention, but her eyes carried the warmth of the fireplace she'd designed for my rebuilt home. A reporter from the local paper raised his hand during the Q&A. If Vivian is watching this right now, what would you want to say to her? The room fell silent. I considered my words carefully. I don't want her to watch this. I said finally, I want her to be silent so the people who actually need to hear this can heal. Driving home after the signing with Layla in the passenger seat, humming along to an old jazz standard, the city lights spread out behind us like a constellation. She turned to me, head tilted slightly. Do you think we're starting something here? I kept my eyes on the road. I'm not sure, but at least I'm not starting from rock bottom anymore. She smiled. The night was quiet. The city glowed behind us. I finished The Book of Exits with these words. I don't hate them. I'm simply grateful that because of them, I learned I don't need to keep anyone just for the sake of memory. The final episode of Quiet Exit aired exactly 1 year after I'd walked in on my wife and brother. It wasn't about saying goodbye, but about embracing true silence, the kind that comes from peace, not repression. I live in a house where no one has betrayed me. I make breakfast, read the morning news, and redraw the map of my life daily. There was no bloody revenge in my story, but there was a bloody ending in silence and real freedom. My name is Noah Dempsey, and this is the story of how I survived not through rage, but by walking through hell and carrying no one with me.